Everyone, welcome to LOA Uncorked. This is Holly.
And this is Gina.
And guess what, Gina?
I know. Big day. Another big day.
We have a famous person here.
I don't know about that.
Super famous. Listen,
Super famous.
you hear her? She sounds famous, don't you think?
She does. She has a lovely voice, and she's a lovely person that I've been stalking for a while, Gina, truth be told.
I know.
Okay,
and Erin, I can help you with the paperwork. The audience knows there's a history here of stalking, but I can help you with the forms.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I got them pre-filled out.
Well, I gotta go a long ways to get her. She's in New York City, and
she should feel a little safer.
Thank you, Erin Claire Jones, for joining LOA Uncorked today. We're so excited to have you. I mean, super excited. You are, and she's going to explain it more, but listen, okay, this gal has it all. She's a leadership coach specializing in human design. She also coaches people. So it's really teams and people, all humans,
right, on
their design to actually lead their best life. And she's going to talk to us more about what is human design.
Yes.
Which
sounds like a combination of human resources and marketing. It's like there's some sort of smash up, right? That's what I think.
It is. And I think that we've talked about astrology before. So there's a derivative of astrology and I Ching and Kabbalah and
chakras. I think
physics.
Chakras are in there even. No, I have questions on the chakra
and so we're going to ask her what it is instead of us just pontificating on what the heck we think it is.
I'm loving this.
But I think of it, here's the interesting thing that I think of it as like your operating system. And so we're going to talk about, how to really know yourself and how to operate yourself to be like in the flow of life is how I think of it. But instead of us pontificating, we're gonna give you the ball, Erin, and let you tell us what do you do and how do you help people, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about what I think it is, and I'm happy to be wrong too. But
no, y'all did great. I love hearing you share about it. I think that I always love hearing like just how other people articulate it, because I think everyone has their own way. So human design is a system based on your exact time, date, and place of birth that reveals your energetic blueprint. What I mean by that is how you're wired to make decisions, work within teams, collaborate, build businesses, parent, partner, all the things. And I think exactly like you said, Holly, it's so much around revealing your unique operating system. I think we often get tripped up when we try to be anything other than what we are. And I think human design reminds us, like, what is the roadmap for us? And I think more than anything, it just gives us permission to step into that. So in terms of how I work with people, whether it's an individual, whether it's a partnership, whether it's a team, it's really giving them the blueprint to how they operate at their best and the tools to step into it. And, and again, more than anything else, like human design actually doesn't tell us anything we don't know. It just gives us a language for everything we've always felt, but often never allowed ourselves to really step into.
Okay, I find this fascinating. Can I just jump in here really
Absolutely.
quick? So I am in human resources. So certainly used lots of tools kind of as a foundation for leadership development. And we've talked on this podcast quite a bit about, Holly says, God, I just wish people understood people's astrology, because it tells you so much about the human and why they behave, and you have a lot of empathy for people.
Right.
You could understand and decode them a little easier if you understand their chart. This is where you get into the design itself and the operating system, because it's much more robust than a astrology chart is in many, many ways. But I find it fascinating that you use this in a business setting, because we've talked about a lot of these tools are not used in a business setting.
Well, and I wonder about that. I'm so glad you started there.
Okay. I told you I'd be quiet for a while, but
I know you can't.
I couldn't
because so we're executives in our day job, and when we get in these leadership teams, I was like, dude, I just wish I could see their chart above their head so I could at least understand how to relate better to them. And that's astrology. And so spoiler alert, audience, we both had our blueprints done by Erin. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But after I see the blueprint, I'm like, holy cow, it would be really helpful. So you actually go in and help teams become optimal, not dysfunctional, like high functioning, efficient teams, right?
Yeah, and that's actually how I got into human design. I came from a startup and business background. And so in 2015, when I discovered human design, I'd been working and consulting for all these startups, and like they were amazing visions and they were amazing people, but like no one knew how to work together. And there was so much dysfunction. And then when I discovered human design, I was my first thought was like, oh my God, this would level up teams in every possible way. Because like if you understand how to communicate with each person, how each person makes decisions, how to leverage them, like it will just be so much more effective. So for the first 2 years of my business, I was focused exclusively on businesses and really supporting them and kind of working together more optimally based on each individual's design. And now it's broadened much more in terms of just supporting individuals and teams. But yeah, it's been so fun doing the work with teams. I just think it really can transform the way that we work together, and mostly by reminding us that we all operate differently. And
Mhm.
and I just like work with so many managers and executives who are expecting their team to mimic how they do things, and they're so disappointed. I had a client recently. She's like, "I've gone through my sixth assistant." I was like, "What is going on?" She's like,
Right.
"No one can keep up with me." I was like, "They're not meant to. That is not their
Right.
gift." And so I think it really is so useful in helping us know how to better function together by really honoring how uniquely and different we each operate. And I think the magic of human design is how tactical and practical it is. It's
Right.
not just like, oh, you're like, it's not an airy thing. It's actually very much like team, like a lot of collaboration might be a lot for you. Like you need to be in your own independent flow, or you can make decisions really quickly. And like these kind of quick questions will help you kind of connect to your truth. So it's really so to the point in a way
Mm,
that I think can be so useful.
that's fascinating. And
I,
you know when you're on in presence of a dysfunctional team or a team that isn't all working together efficiently, because you feel energetically drained trying to make that work, right? Like, so that is just
yeah.
fascinating.
Well, we've done
Fascinating.
everything. We've done the Hogan, we've done the
Hogan.
Myers-Briggs. I mean, we've done
Mhm.
all of that. And I still have done the Hogan for my teams. It's
Mhm.
helpful,
Mhm.
but it's not as practical and in depth as what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. This is really taking serious science when you take your date, time, your whole astrology,
Yeah.
birth date and all of that and put it into science. And then
Right.
I mean, I think we should tell everybody, stop right now, stop the recording, go
Yeah.
to Erin Claire Jones' website, and you can actually download your chart for free,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And once you see the chart, it's going to scare the hell out of you because there's so much
100%.
information on there.
Mhm.
And so Gina and I did that, and then we signed up for your blueprint, and 60 some pages later,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, what is that? Well, it was so much practical
Yes.
how to, which you don't get in astrology. You get a flavor for, how you show up and your gifts, and you get a flavor for that, but not in a practical format like this.
Well, and you get about 60 pages in whether it's the Hogan or any other leadership development tool, but it's not as
No.
uniquely designed for yourself. It's
Yeah.
more general based on a bunch of data that came from a bunch of other leaders prior to you. Like it's
Right.
not. This is how you as a leader are wired, or you as a person are wired, and how you can optimize your leadership. And um, very reasonable for the quality of
Mm.
the blueprint and the design.
Mhm. Mhm.
Brilliant. It's an important investment for people to be making from a
Yeah, and I
self-awareness
would just
standpoint.
say, I was sharing beforehand that I dabbled a little bit in human design before, and I had done my chart. I thought I can learn this. Yeah, she laughed. She's going to spit out her tea, right? And I can learn this, and this is how I'm wired to, like, oh, I can figure
Well,
anything
she's a
out. Like,
geologist and a
I'm.
shaman and all
It's
these
so
other
many
things.
things. Okay, and I started like piecing it out. So the type, which we'll talk a little bit about that, we
Yeah.
have to. So everybody's going to have their type and everything.
Yeah.
We'll touch base on that. I really realized that it didn't resonate until I looked at it in its totality.
Mhm.
And so the blueprint actually looks at it in totality, to how can you get in the flow in a
Mhm.
practical way and live your design. And so what Gina and I, we got so excited when we got our blueprint.
Mhm.
We just so happened to have it the same time as we are going to our trip to Sedona. So we get on the airplane, we're matching it up, and we're reading and laughing and sharing. And now it's like I continually go back and look at it and say, okay, how can I step in it? Because the newsflash is this: I'm not living my design.
No.
like
No.
like not any, I mean, not any part of it. So So not in any way, but it resonated with me. It was like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be
Mhm.
doing everything myself and,
Yeah.
and burning myself out. I should
Yeah.
allow others to do that, and I should, like, just because I can make decisions really, really quick. 'Cause I think, I mean, I pride myself on the quickest decisions. I'm not supposed to do that. Big decisions, I'm supposed to wait for clarity. And I was
Exactly.
like, that could be uncomfortable. Let's try
Mhm.
that out. And
Yeah, for all of us around her also. Not just for her. Not just for her.
Mhm.
so maybe, like, before we get into like some of the details about the types and such, maybe you can say the
Yeah.
other thing I was thinking about was you also have you offer readings. And
Mhm.
so how would you, for our audience, if they're interested in human design after we get done discussing it, how would you go about that? Would you have them get their blueprint and then book a reading, or what's your thoughts on how the
Getting
reading?
someone started appropriately in
Yeah,
the, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah, with the
because it
tool.
has to be looked at holistically, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you shared about just the reading it and being like, it resonates, I'm not living it. I think that
Mhm.
often human design is like equal parts relieving and confronting. Like I think
Yeah.
when I first
Yeah.
discovered my human design, I
Love
was
it.
like, oh my God, that is me in a nutshell. I am not living any of it, you know? And so I think so often we've been trained to be opposite of what we are. And so it's a real process to keep coming back to it. So I think in terms of where to get people started, I definitely would think the blueprint is like the best place to start because it's not meant to be a thing that you read once. It's
Mm-mm.
meant to be a thing that you
Mhm.
keep going back to, especially in moments of resistance and challenge. And you'll probably find new things pop out every time as a way to just support you and really integrating and living it. Sessions are wonderful. It's really wonderful to kind of talk through things with people and apply things even more practically to their lives in terms of like sitting with somebody and they're like, okay, I'm a projector and I want to like build a business. Like, what should I keep in mind in terms of building a business in alignment? So
Oh, I
I
love
think that
that.
kind
That's
of
brilliant.
space is so nice because my intention with everything that I do is just to make the information super practical
Yeah.
and super empowering. Like, let's actually use it in your life. I think like not everyone wants to learn human design. Like you were saying, Holly, like
Yeah.
it's not that you can't, you absolutely could if you wanted to, but most people, they want to know how to use human design to live a more aligned life. They're like, I don't care
Absolutely.
about my gate 25.2. Like, tell me what I can
Yeah.
actually do. So I think
Yeah.
that my orientation, both through the blueprint and sessions, is very much around giving people information to that end.
Mhm.
And so you can't really start in the wrong place, but I do think the blueprint is a nice thing because it's like a book to you that you can always have.
Well,
Yeah.
and I love that. And Gina, what I heard her say is we'd be the perfect team for her
Yes.
to do a reading for. Like, we're starting up our business.
Yeah.
How do we work
Totally.
together the best?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And
we are different. I mean,
we're
very different. I mean,
different and yet so perfect
and yes, so exactly. And I
together.
do think we naturally leverage each other and our differences, but there are definitely areas that we could do better for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, always. I think that's the case. I
Yeah.
agree.
And I agree. I've gone back to the blueprint
I
plenty
mean,
of
if Erin
times.
ever answers our calls again after today,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we will maybe do
She'll be like, yeah,
that.
no, not those two.
I
I
know, I
love
know.
that. So what happened when you saw your design and you weren't living it? That makes me feel a lot of comfort. Okay. So what did you do how do you start?
Mhm.
Hmm. So human design is endless. There's like, the blueprint is like 60 plus pages, but like it could be 400 pages. I think that like that's just like the most important stuff. I think understanding your type and your strategy and your inner authority are going to be the most important pieces to start with. And so
Mhm.
for me, that looked like I'm a projector in human design. My authority is emotional, I think, like both of you. And my strategy is about waiting to be recognized and invited in. So, at a more practical level, that was the awareness that I wasn't here to be a doer. I was much better suited to be like a leader, a guide, a master of systems and not like a
Right.
consistent doer. And so I
Right.
started to kind of build businesses in partnership with people that could really support me in the doing. And that really kind of allowed me to just like be in the system and really kind of work with the people. I learned that my energy really operates in ebbs and flows. And the more I take rest when I need it, the more effective I'll be. So I started to kind of build my days with a lot more spaciousness because I used to always be like, how much can I do? And I would just burn
Right.
myself out like crazy. I think a big thing in
Yeah.
terms of building my business and life is knowing that like I'm actually not here to initiate or chase after anything. Like my job is to let myself be seen and wait to be invited in. And so whether it was in business, just sharing myself on Instagram or in podcasts and waiting for the right invitations, or community wise, like only investing in the relationships where I felt really treasured and seen and valued, it really shifted where I invested my energy. And then I think the third piece was around, this is true for all three of us, is that none of us are meant to be impulsive or spontaneous. Many people are, not us, like,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
really beginning to kind of take my time to feel into relationships and opportunities and not jumping into things really saved me so much time, because I really kind of started entering into things that were correct for me in the first place. And
Right.
so I think really beginning to play with your type, how to best use your energy, your strategy, how to create the most aligned opportunities, and your inner authority, how to make decisions, just dialing in those three can be pretty transformative.
Well, I'm just fascinated. That was super, super helpful, just as a
Yeah.
somewhere to start,
Yeah.
um, because there is so much information. But I think for me, what's so fascinating is this overlay with energy, which you could say that about astrology. It's not as close of a tie. So I'm just, we talk on the podcast often that, time is one of those things that, it is an investment, when whether it's relationships, partnerships, commitment levels, but beyond that, like, if you're choosing to engage in your life in a way that drains your resources, whether it's time or energy, it's the same thing. And so for me, energy is a big deal. Like I struggle managing energy for me.
Hmm.
So I'm just curious, can you talk a little bit about the tie between energy and this work? And for those that are struggling with their energy, is there a spot within the human design to look at? Is there a cheat sheet for energy, and where to start to just to gain the best positive
Yeah.
impact on energy?
Yeah, definitely the type. The type is going to
Yeah.
reveal so much. So if I was to give you guys the example, so Gina, like you're a manifesting generator, and there's some
Hmm.
similarity to generators as well. And it basically means that you're actually meant to have like an extraordinary amount of capacity and vitality and energy. But what gives you that energy is when you're actually lit up and energized and excited by what you're doing. If you're
Hmm.
doing things because you're depleted, you're drained, you think you should, it will drain your battery so quickly you have access to none of that vitality. If you're prioritizing your excitement, your joy on a daily basis, whether it's work related or not, you might be like, I love going to yoga and I love spending time with Holly. And so I'm going to
Yeah.
do those things, like it gives you more energy to do everything else. So I would say for you, the biggest thing is staying so connected to what is naturally lighting you up and exciting you and prioritizing that. And
Yeah.
if there are things that are depleting and draining you that you can let go of, it will free up your energy so deeply and create so much more space for things to come in. And I
Yeah.
would say for you also, the last piece that I would share is that like how energy would work in an ideal way for you is for you to kind of wake up in the morning like energized and excited.
Hmm.
You spend the day using up your energy in ways that feel really stimulating, really fun, and really
Hmm.
exciting. And you drop into bed like spent and fulfilled. And like
Hmm.
that's what allows you to sleep well at night. And then you wake up energized. If you aren't actually using up your energy in ways that are satisfying, you'll probably go to bed and feel like really depleted in an unsatisfying way and also really restless.
Yeah. Restless.
And
That's a
so like
great.
it's using it up, like you've got to use it up to actually drop into bed and feel satisfied.
And that
So
resonates, right,
Oh,
Gina?
completely
Yeah.
resonates. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's interesting, as exhausted as I can sometimes feel, I'm restless, which
yeah,
is fascinating. So
you
I
got to
hadn't.
use it up. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, and you feel like you're using it up, but you're not.
In
Not
It's
in the
just
right
a
in the
way.
healthy
wrong way.
way.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fascinating. Super helpful.
And you're a projector. And
Mhm.
Yes.
so projectors, sometimes people don't like when you say, I have to wait to be invited in, but I think there's a misnomer there. Can you talk a little bit about
Oh,
that?
yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
talking for our audience, we're talking about the types. So look at your chart, and it's the first thing on the
Mhm.
chart. It'll tell you your type.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And
Mhm.
and one thing I just want to add before I share that,
Yeah.
just so
Mhm.
you know the difference for you, Holly, and your energy, because you
Mm.
also have really powerful energy, but your energy is probably not going to operate consistently. So for
Mhm.
you, it's not about like, let me use up my energy every day in ways that are really satisfying. It's more like, how can I really leverage the energetic and creative bursts that happen when they come? And then how can I give myself permission to take like a rest and space and time alone when it's gone? Like you're
Yeah.
just not here to be a consistent doer. Like your gift is like getting things off the ground, and you probably have the most energy for that. And then it's about like handing things off and taking rest. And so like if you're in this like mode of like I've got to keep going and going and going, it's going to burn you out so quickly. And you also don't give yourself space for like the new ideas, the new inspirations to come through. And so
Yeah.
Very
I would
true.
say for you, your energy is actually meant to be quite inconsistent. And your job is to really honor what you're in the mood for and take rest and space and time alone when you need it.
And you know what's so interesting is that's
Fascinating.
so uncomfortable.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
Which part of it's
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable?
It's uncomfortable that I'm not doing.
Mhm,
Right. And so I
mhm.
feel like I'm not, well, maybe I was raised that way or
Mhm.
whatever, but I don't, but the reality is I know you're right. It's like I get these bursts and I'm like, oh, but I think I should just keep going.
And the eyes
It's just
look
uncomfortable.
crazy
I
like
mean, like
that
it's
too.
just
They,
crazy.
yeah. When the
Yeah.
eyes show up like that, I get worried. Yeah,
She
yeah.
gets the phone call. I'm like, Gina,
Oh, I gotta do
I
it.
got blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
We got to have this
And
reality
we're gonna do it
show, and
tomorrow.
we're doing it tomorrow, and I've written
Yeah.
out 6 episodes. I mean,
Yeah.
this shit happens, okay? And then
Mhm.
I'm like,
And then
oh,
there's this lull and she gets
and I'm
wickedly
not.
uncomfortable.
Then I get upset,
Mhm.
in the lull. So I have to honor that.
And I think my reminder for you is that like the lull is where the ideas come. And so
Right.
if you don't give yourself that space, you also don't allow yourself to kind of be inspired in that way.
Right. I
Um,
love that.
That's
and
perfect.
then to answer your question around the invitation, so projectors, similar to
Yep.
manifestors, aren't really here to be consistent. Our energy ebbs and flows as well, and we're more gifted as like leaders and guides than we are doers. But our strategy is about being invited into things and not initiating. And I think that it's not meant to be a super passive strategy. I know that can feel like a little bit scary for people. It did for me
Yes.
when I first discovered that as an entrepreneur. I
Right.
was like, how do I build a business? And I think what I learned was the invitation was just a tool to protect my energy. It was just a tool to make sure I was only sharing my guidance and
Mhm.
perspective with people that actually wanted to hear it.
I love
And so if
that.
I was just like trying to share my insights with people that didn't want to hear it, it didn't feel good for them. It didn't feel good for me. And like projector energy is quite intense. And so I realized that like I can protect my energy by really conserving it and sharing it with the people that are really ready. And I can
Right.
make myself most available for those people by very actively sharing myself with the world. And for me, that happens through podcasts and newsletters and Instagram. And I just share pretty consistently and allow invitations to come. But I see the invitation more than anything else as like my kind of boundary, as a tool to kind of protect my energy and make sure I'm only sharing myself with people that actually want to hear from me.
God, I love
I
that.
do too. And so when you first learned human design, were you operating that way or were you operating? Yeah.
Oh, heck
Okay. No.
no. Yeah, I think that like I was chasing after all the things. I was
Right.
really deriving all my value in being the doer, and I wasn't great at it. And even I will say like I started working with human design in 2015. I built a company with my first teacher for 2 years, and then I built my own practice starting in 2017, 2018, and now my fiance is my business partner. But like the first iteration of my human design business, I still was chasing after things. Like I was still
Mm.
pitching companies and all those things because it was so
Right.
new and it was really hard. Like we were really not finding much flow in the business and it was also really early. But I think where I started to find so much more flow and success in my practice and in my business was when I just started sharing in a really broad way and trusting that the invitations would come. And
Mm.
they obviously come more now than they did them, but like it just works so much better for me and it also just felt so much better. And I think that's the magic of human design. It doesn't only let us know what will lead to more success and satisfaction, but like how to do it in a way that actually feels good.
Wow.
Well,
Were there tools that were there practices? Because we talk a lot on the podcast about just practical things that you could implement in your everyday life. So when you're switching kind of your wiring back to kind of your how you were built versus how you've built yourself, right, to behave.
yeah.
When you're doing that, are there some rules or some guidelines that you have found to help keep you, because that's going to be a process, right, to go from
It's a
I'm going to do
process.
everything to I'm going to sit back, I'm going to change my whole strategy, when everything's on the line and something that you are passionate about and you love. Like how did you keep steady on the course of switching gears and fighting how you had learned to behave
Right. Like, is
with
this an
who I
invitation
am.
or am
Right,
I
right,
hustling?
right.
Right.
Does that
Like,
make sense?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Hmm.
like it really is a process. And I think human design is an awareness system. I think when we understand our design, it's just like we're always kind of aware of it. I think that like the biggest switch for me is that like I was so scared of being seen. And so it actually felt safer to like
Mm,
pitch companies than it did to like put myself out there on Instagram. And I have a partner that was pretty aware of my design. And so he was the one that was really just like, Erin, like people can't find you unless they see you. And I was like, but I don't want to be seen. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta put yourself out there. And so like I just started. So like I think
interesting.
that I just started sharing on Instagram every single day. And like I
Wow.
can't I don't do it as much anymore, but I mean I share often. But I think that like it was really just cultivating the practice. But I think then I started to see so much success from it that it was like a
Yeah.
snowball. Do you know what I mean? Where I was just like, and I was even beyond Instagram, I was just like, I gotta just like share, I gotta let people know that I do human design.
Yeah.
I've got to like put myself out there. So I think it was really uncomfortable for me, but I think that I actually so immediately saw like a different response and reaction to it that it just fueled me and
Mm.
gave me so much more ability to do it.
Makes it
Um,
easier to
yeah.
switch that gear. Yeah. No, that makes great
Well,
sense. Go
and
ahead.
one of the things that you said was flow. I
Mhm.
love that terminology because you even have in the human design, in the blueprint, it says when you're on track, when you're
I
off
know.
track,
Yeah.
how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I keep going back to that because I thought, well, I'm committed to getting more in the flow and being in my lane because it resonated so much. And so when I'm off track, I was like, I get angry. I have anger issues. And I was like, I don't think I'm an angry person, but when I think about it,
Mhm.
it's right. And Gina knows me well enough that I'll be like, oh, what the hell are they talking about? I mean, I will get into that versus, oh, I'm so frustrated or,
Mhm.
like I do.
Mhm.
And so there are guideposts to really
Yeah.
help you figure out, well, am I in the flow? Or am I not in the flow? Am I
Yeah.
feeling depleted or am I not feeling
Right.
depleted or energized? I should say, am I feeling energized? And so I feel like the blueprint kind of gives you that ability and the practical advice too to go back and say,
Yeah.
okay, this is how I'm going to, live. And then I'm going to keep looking at it. And I don't want to say self-correcting, but like
Adjusting.
Course
adjusting.
correcting.
Yeah.
Yeah, course correcting. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. Because like you said, it's there it's an operating system, but we can optimize how we perform if you keep turning the knobs and getting it dialed in over time, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's so complex. I don't think people will run out of ways to try and optimize the operating system because there are so many suggestions, and the depth of the design is significant enough that you'll have things that you can keep tweaking and
Oh,
making
yeah.
better for
Yeah.
quite some time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking about the types. So we've talked about manifester. I'm a manifester. We've talked about manifesting generators. Gina's a manifesting generator. And is that the same as being a generator, or is there a flat? What's the difference between those two categories?
Yeah, they're very similar. Some people do group them together. I think the difference is that they're both kind of doers and builders and creators and kind of really at their best have so much creative energy to make things happen when they're really lit up and excited. The difference is that manifesting generators like you, Gina, are often quite multi-passionate by nature. Like I
Mhm,
would guess for you, it's actually really good to have every day look a little bit different and to like
mhm.
not be like sticking with the same thing forever. Like your job is to just like pivot and reinvent yourself and like honor what you have the energy for. And I would say one of your gifts is moving quite fast and like having people around you that can help you like in every detail. So you can just kind of be in
Mhm,
your powerful, fast and creative flow.
mhm.
Generators, pure generators are a bit more about kind of mastery, a real desire to kind of really go deep into a process. And they carry kind of this very like
Gotcha.
steadfast commitment. Again, if you're a generator and you love doing lots of things, I'll never tell you not to do it. I would just check in and make sure you actually have the energy for all those things at once. And there's so much more nuance underneath it. But I would just remind
Yeah,
you, Gina, that like
yeah.
it's not about putting everything you do into one box or making sense of it all, but just like knowing that when you have the
Mm,
energy for something, it's enough
mhm.
reason to do it. And
Okay.
it'll probably make sense a little bit later.
Yeah, that's
I
fantastic.
love
That's
that. And
fantastic.
so we
So
talked
true.
about projectors, and then
Mhm.
there's one more that we haven't
Reflectors,
talked. Reflectors,
Reflectors.
which there aren't that many
Was it less than
reflectors.
1% or something? It's
1%.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And what is that? Just in case our audience, we have one in our audience. I don't know.
You definitely won. So reflectors are our collective mirrors. These are people that are incredibly
Mhm,
sensitive to their physical space and always kind of taking in and magnifying the energy that they're around. And so it's so important for reflectors to be such ruthless curators of the people they're spending time with and the places they're spending time in because they're taking it all in. And the magic of reflectors is in their fluidity, meaning that they will have periods where they feel like a manifesting generator like Gina, a manifestor like Holly,
uh-huh.
a projector, a generator. And so their job is not to figure out the one thing that they are or show up consistently in one way, but honor whatever feels like them that day, and
Oh,
knowing that their identity is vast and their job is to kind of stay tuned into what wants to be expressed. And the last piece that I would share is that especially when we talk about like HR, Gina, and
Yeah.
business, is that
Yeah.
in the context of business, we call reflectors evaluators because
Mhm.
they really thrive when they can just like move around and kind of like objectively observe what's going on. I
Right.
always say the
Mm.
ideal role for them is like the CEO whisperer, where they're just like in a role where they're like, what do you see? Like whenever I work for the reflector, I'm literally all the time being like, but what do you see? And what do you think about that? Because they just like see and sense things that so many people don't. And so like if you have a reflector on your team and you're trying to make them a generator, it's going to be challenging. If
Mhm.
you value their perspective and like realize what a treasure and gift you
Yeah.
have, it will be
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah.
And so it's important for reflectors just to kind of close that loop to really be around people and in spaces where their perspective feels really treasured and valued, because that will make such a difference.
That's fascinating.
I know.
And would they also uh, behave like a protector or manifester, manifesting generator because of who they're surrounding themselves at any given time? Is it that obvious to them they're reflecting someone else's design or a collective design?
It's both. So they're going
Yeah.
to kind of reflect back who they're around. So I
Okay.
always say if somebody's partner to the reflector, I'm just like, take really good care of yourself
Yeah.
because you're going to have a strong mirror in your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also going to be activated by like what's going on in the world and the planets and all the things. And so like it's
Right.
actually really normal for them to have periods of the month, regardless of who they're around, that they will feel more like a manifesting generator or a generator or projector. And so
That's
it's both in that way.
fascinating.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I'm sure they make themselves wrong for being everywhere. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that there's that
Yeah.
non-living that would be hard for them as
Mhm.
well as the rest of us.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Wow.
those are the types. And then we have the strategy that's important. And then the authorities. Those are the top three things, like when you pull your chart,
Mhm.
that you'll see. And so, I mean, I'm not doing either one of those, Gina, right? Compared to my design.
Well, compared to your design, that
Yes.
is,
And
yeah.
and the authority is really, if we talk about that, this is such an important thing, is how we make decisions. And so to
Yeah.
understand how
Yeah.
best you make decisions, I was saying that, I pride myself on making quick, just great decisions. I'm a decisive person, and I'm actually supposed to wait around and linger and wait for my clarity to happen for big decisions.
Yeah.
And so
Which I think you do
I think I
sometimes.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do, but I just don't
I think in
think
your
about,
personal life you do. I think in the
yes.
business world it's
In business, it's
Mhm.
like, no,
Mhm.
okay, no,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know. That's
Mhm.
an interesting
Mhm.
concept, if,
Mhm.
to go and check in on business versus personal. Is there a difference between how we behave business wise and personal? What are your thoughts on that? You should just always behave the same way. What are your thoughts, Erin?
Yeah, I think that I think it's normal to show up in different ways, like different parts of you will probably be pulled out, but the strategies and things will remain the same.
Mhm.
Or it's just like in terms of taking your time with decisions, you might find that a lot of business decisions are moment, like in the moment, smaller ones you've got to decide right now. I would still say for the bigger ones, take your time for your design. But yeah, I mean, I think the principles of human design apply to every part of your life. I
Yeah.
think that it will show up differently 100%. But like for me, I'm here to be invited in both with my friends and my partner, as well as like my clients and the people that I work with. So, and I think that like that's so true, is that like how we are in one place can translate to so many different places. So it is, yeah.
I think that's so important. We've talked about it on the podcast
Mhm.
quite a bit, Aaron, and I think this is maybe more so for females by quite a bit than males, is that we feel like we have to show up differently in the workplace than we do at home.
Mhm.
And I think there's a paradigm there that we've talked on this podcast. I am wickedly different outside of the office than I am in the office. Wickedly different,
Mhm.
because I've stuffed myself in this box that I felt like I had to be stuffed in, right?
Right.
And so Holly and has really helped go. That's just you think that. No one's making you do that. How do you know it won't work
Uh-huh.
if you
Yeah.
aren't just authentically yourself and show up and provide your feedback authentically as yourself, the way you would sitting here at Holly's house versus in the office. And
Mhm.
she's absolutely right. I've actually seen a significant development in my professional career because I have finally
Mm.
honored my voice and but that's hard to break when you have behaved that way. And I think it shows up very different for you, but I think there is a part of that we all
Mhm.
sort of felt like as females, especially the higher up you go, the more
Right.
different you have to behave in the
Right.
workplace.
How do you help coach all people, not just females, with how to show up at work? Because I think this is a huge issue
Mhm.
with and of course we see it, we are female, so we can understand that the best, and
Yeah.
speak to it
Yeah.
the most concisely. But do you coach that? Because
Mhm.
I do see that happen in our world a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that definitely. I think it's really around I mean, human design is about helping people show up as themselves wherever they are. Whether that's
Mhm.
as a parent or as a partner or as a boss or as a
Mhm.
employee,
Yeah.
And so like even a session I did recently with a woman who was recently promoted and she had done so well in her previous position, but she got in this new position and she was basically trying to do it like her boss had done. And she
Mhm.
was like, this feels so icky. I hate this kind of leadership. And it was so cool to kind of talk about let's talk about the way of leading that might actually feel good to you. And she just you could see her whole body release where she's like, oh, that sounds amazing. I can lead that way. I don't have to do it like they did. And so I think it really just reminds us how to show up as ourselves. And again, it's
Yeah.
not that I or human design knows better. It's just that human design gives us the language that kind of reminds us of that.
Yeah.
And I think
Fascinating.
I think well, I'm wondering if it also human design by showing up, by owning your design and how you were wired, if you show up in that leadership, given this example that you were talking to, if you showed up and tried to lead that way and were continually getting not what you need there, it's probably not a good fit. So it's
Mhm.
not about you, right? I mean, so there are, you can be and she could have been in a role that they say, you know what, you can't lead like that. You need to be something else. And then she knows, well, this isn't for me.
Mhm.
Is that the case too that you see?
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
human
Yeah.
design is really it's confronting. Do you know what
It's
I mean?
confronting. I love this.
I think
Mhm.
that I'll sit with
So
people in
good.
sessions. I remember one of my dear clients I've been sitting with regularly for I don't know 2 years now. She was like our first session. She's designed to make decisions based on her gut feeling in the moment. And so if I was to ask her, "Do you want to do this?" She will immediately know.
Yeah.
And she had just got a new job and it ticked all the boxes. And I was like, "And do you want to do it?" And she's like, "No." And it was just so and she quit her job the next day, and it's an amazing and not everyone can do that, sometimes it'll take more time, but it's been amazing to watch her transform based on that. So I think that it's very revealing. I think that if a relationship or a
Fascinating.
job or a community is no longer right for you, human design will reveal that pretty quickly. And that can be really scary. But I think that human design requires an immense amount of trust and that when we really let go of what's no longer for us and create space for what is, we will benefit in all the ways. But I
Mm.
think that it is, I think that the only people that would be really resistant to human design is if you're just trying to stick with something because you think you should.
Or have to.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
but yes, I think it's very revealing. You'll know pretty immediately whether something's for you or not. And I
And
just remind you of it.
I love that revealing and confronting because it gives you language to make it like this isn't because I'm bad or I'm not good enough or it's not because we have a tendency
Yeah.
to want to blame ourselves for the non-fit versus that it's just doesn't work. It's just
Mhm.
objective. It just
Mhm.
doesn't work. And so it gives you language, it gives you thoughts around that and then you can decide what to do. I of course like to my shadow side, I like to hold on to things too long. And I was like, oh my God, yes, that's so true in every way I do that. And
Mhm.
so, and that's the shadow side. And
Right.
human design told me that.
Mhm.
It's just really a beautiful,
Yeah.
wonderful way of really understanding yourself
Yeah.
and making it practical and not making yourself wrong for being wired a certain way
Totally.
and when you step into it we see you, we see your big smile. We're saying when you step into it and you're living it, you're in the flow and you are more
Mm,
joyful and more happy.
Yeah, no
mhm.
doubt. And I know we're running close on time, but Erin, I was thinking about this as I was, reading my human design and kind of understanding the tool a little bit better. Is um, I'm curious. I mean, you've been doing this quite some time. Like, what has been the biggest takeaway from your work with regard to
Mm.
human design? Like, what has been the biggest? What is it given to you personally? that you feel like is the biggest gift?
I think two things. I think that like the first is that in reminding us how different we each are, I think human design brings us closer together. Like
Mm.
I feel like I have so much more compassion and understanding in my relationships because like my dad's a projector like me. I used to make him so wrong growing up where I'm like, he's taking a nap. He's like, he was such a good projector. And I was just like, I can't believe he's doing it. And now I'm like, I love it. You know what I mean? We're together. I'm
Mhm.
like, take a nap, take your space. Like, so I just feel like I feel so much more understanding of the people around me and so much more supportive of them and so much more connected to them. And so I think revealing our differences brings us closer together. So that's been the first one. And
Mm.
the second one is I think that I really like my transformation with human design is that like I really learned how to approach it with like a lot less dogma. Like I've sat with many, many thousands of people and like the accuracy is literally mind blowing. And I don't think it's really about that anymore. You know, I think that like with my work with people, especially with all the skeptics and the teams, is like I'm like, it what matters is like less of whether it's true and more like is it helpful. And I
Mm.
think like
Yeah,
when
I
I've
love
been able,
that.
yeah, and I think when I and my partner's been so supportive in helping me communicate in that way, but I think when I've started to communicate in that way, I'm just like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Like I'm just introducing a tool and you got to choose how to engage with it. I think it's allowed me to reach a much broader audience, and I think it's allowed human design to feel like a much more empowering tool for people. I
Yeah.
think if you're just telling them like this is true, believe it or not, they're like, ooh, you know. But if you're just like, this is what it says, take it or leave it, they're like, oh my God, that feels amazing. And like, I want to take that. And so I think that it's been a real lesson for me in like learning how to approach this much more loosely and in a way that I think is much more empowering for people.
Yeah. And that's why I love the fact that you're using it in business, because I so often when we're walking through a leadership development tool like the Hogan or any other, there's all this rhetoric around the science behind the results and how they can defend it and it's legitimate and all these things that at the end of the day, I mean, to some of us that doesn't matter, right? Is it, does it ring true or not? And there's
Yeah.
sometimes even with some of those tools you have to sit with it for a while. Now I don't know, I don't do that, and then a year later you're like, yeah, I kind of do I kind of
Yeah.
do that. So sometimes it takes a while to like totally take the tool in, but I love the fact that this is how you're wired. I don't, there's not a defending of it. There's not a scientific thing. It
Totally.
just, I love that. And I think business needs a bit more of that
I
Yeah.
think
to
so
be,
too.
yeah, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
science behind it, but you
Mhm.
have to be ready to learn
Welcome
about
it in. Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Be open to
And
it.
Yeah.
I do think people who gravitate to this, they're
Yeah.
interested in knowing.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's why
so.
you keep going back to it, because you can't learn it all in one sitting.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I've also been really blown away by the receptivity of teens. You know,
Mhm.
I think that like what I found is that people are just like, I want to learn about myself. And people love learning about themselves, you know? And so I think that even the most skeptical people have really loved it, at least in the work that I've done.
Good.
And I think that's been really beautiful to see. But it has required that approach of just like take it or leave it. And I think people have really like appreciated that.
Right. I
I
love
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
And I do love, I mean, one more question or comment
Mhm.
or dialogue with you, Erin, about teens. So, what I'm seeing with teens, I had a bunch of teens
Mm.
in my bedroom last night. They come in, they're 17, they're talking about astrology because they have it on, they have CoStar and they have all this other
One is her
stuff.
daughter.
Yeah,
The
I would
arrestor. I mean, they're
assume.
not random
they're
teens that
random
I
wander
was
teens.
up.
like, in your
No.
bedroom?
My
Yeah.
daughter in my bedroom.
Yeah,
Well, she brought them in. My daughter brought them
and
in,
her friends.
and
Yeah.
and so they're like, oh, sun, moon, rising, like that's an important
Yeah.
thing. And I guess my thought is I would love you to, maybe you need an app or something. Are you working on that, on
Mhm.
human design, so that we can have teens start knowing their
Yeah.
human design? Because I love astrology, but what I love even more about the human design is the practical
I
part. So as
know.
they're looking at college, so all these teens in my bedroom late at night, okay, I'm
Mhm.
like, get out. Okay. No, I love them really.
Mhm.
Okay. I feel like as you evaluate college, as you evaluate
Yeah.
what you're doing,
Totally.
it's a service. Like I think you should do it. So we're gonna we're since I can't I'm not understanding it because I need to really live my human design. So I don't need to go preach it.
Figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
out. I need to figure myself out. But you are in a unique position. We can challenge you to like let's figure out
Yeah.
how to connect with the teens and help them understand their human design.
And to your point, I do think that younger generations are more open to whether it's astrology. I mean,
Agreed.
they're wired, and
Agreed.
they're that there's a readiness, I guess, with this
Yeah.
younger generation to help them evolve. And I agree with you. The human design for someone at that spot in their life is a beautiful
the-
tool. Mhm.
It's the most impactful. Like, I think that I work with so many people that are like, if only I had discovered this 30 years ago.
Exactly. Me
But
too. I
I've
think
been
that.
but I've been so uplifted recently. I've had a lot of clients purchase sessions and blueprints for their like teens,
Kids, yeah.
and I think that like the earlier we discover it, the better, because it gives us that permission from early on. So I think that we'll definitely explore more and more resources to make it accessible in that way. But I think you're right, Gina, that I think that like
Mhm.
there's so much more openness to it. But I think
Yeah.
the impact it can have at that age is just like tremendous.
Yeah, it's
I'm seeing an app designed for teens that's fun and interactive, and you need to do that.
see, this
is my manifester
I'm
thing.
glad
right?
you're getting the wild eyes. This is not me getting it. This
Now
is
I'm
not a
gonna
to-do for
now
me,
I'm gonna
actually.
ping you and say you got to do it,
With
Erin.
those
You
eyes,
got to
you see,
do
I'm
it.
like,
I know, I'm
it looks
excited
crazy.
for
It
you.
looks a little crazy. This is we'll write that in the paperwork as well. Like, that we're a little
Perfect.
concerned for stability and stuff. Yeah. No, make sure.
Well, we sure are really happy that you joined us
Yeah.
today. Very
Mhm.
thankful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time and your treasures, sharing your treasures and talents with us. And
Expertise and delightfulness. I mean,
Yeah.
you're welcome anytime. If not,
Aw.
when we come to New York, we'll come see you in the horses. How about that?
The best of here. I love that.
Uh-huh.
I
For
love that.
sure, for sure.
Well, and we will put everything in the show notes of how to get
Mhm.
a hold of her and how to download your chart and then re-listen to the episode so you get all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also happy to offer a discount code for the blueprint if you guys want to offer one to your community.
Absolutely.
That
That'd
would
be
be
great.
fantastic. Okay, we'll get all the details and put it
Okay,
in the
great.
show notes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And if you have a word you use, I'll just add that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Yay.
Thank you, Erin, for your time. It was
Thank
delightful.
Thank you.
you.
Such a
right.
pleasure. Thank
we
you
ap-
both.
We appreciate you.
Uh-huh.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
We believe in magic. This is Holly.
And this is Gina.
The LOA uncorked definition of magic is recognizing something special has occurred and you don't know how or why.
And we invite each of you to experience more magic, joy, lots of laughter, all while uncorking your inner badassery to up-level your life.
Everyone, welcome to the party.